Jacqueline Sofield, the ADD coach for adults, and today I wanted to give you 3 top tips on how to remember what you read. So of all the years that I've been working with adults with ADHD, this is probably one of the most common because it affects almost everyone that I've ever met. So regardless of what you do, whether you're a student, you're an office worker, have your own business, it's a reoccurring problem. But there are things that you can do so that you do remember what to read, and I'm going to give you 3 of them right now. So the first thing is to use movement, and when you're reading a book, you can, if you're moving at the same time, and I'll tell you the different types of movement that you could use. What happens is it acts as a mild distraction so that you can focus on the main event. And in this case, the main event is you reading and trying to remember what you've read. So one way to move is to pace, just up and down. You don't need to travel far, just up and down. Another thing is to chew gum. Even a small movement of just your jaw moving up and down, that acts in the way that we want it to. Another way is to use a stress ball. And then another way, just as I'm sitting on this chair, look, this chair kind of moves a bit. It could even be as simple as that. But that movement just allows you to focus on what you're reading. And when you're focused on what you're reading, you're going to remember it. So the next thing is motivation. Now, Dr. Russell Barkley says ADHD is less about attention and more about motivation. So if you're reading something that you're motivated and interested in, you're way more likely to be able to remember it. So unfortunately, not everything that we have to read is something that we're motivated to read. So it might not be that interesting, but if we can try and remember why we are reading it, we can tap into motivation like that. So you might be reading the world's boringest textbook, but you wouldn't just be reading it just because. There would be a link, probably because you want to finish the course, and so then you'll get your degree, or you'll want to finish the world's boringest textbook so that you'll be better at your job. So always link it back, like find some type of motivation, even if the text itself isn't interesting. And then another thing regarding motivation, what you can do is you can set yourself little mini goals. So for example, you might say, okay, so the next 30 minutes I'm going to read X number of pages, and then I'm going to go for a little walk, or break it down into bite-sized pieces so that the whole book or the whole chapter doesn't feel overwhelming. And then the last tip, and probably the most important, is to become an active reader. So when you become an active reader, you're not just passively reading whatever is on that page. What you're doing is you're actively engaging in the text. And when that happens, you're remembering what you're reading, and you're linking that new information with existing information. So if we use the example of Untapped Brilliance, this is my book, and we go to the first chapter. So the first chapter is all about omega-3. So you might say, okay, omega-3, what do I know about omega-3? And straight away your brain starts percolating, and you come up with some answers where you might say, well, I don't really know anything about omega-3. Or you might say, oh, is that fish oil? I wonder if cod liver oil is similar. My grandma used to take cod liver oil. So your brain never disappoints you. It always has some information. Even if it's not a direct answer, it will have some in sort of in the neighbouring regions. So it all, whatever it comes up with, it's all good. And then chapters usually don't just have the chapter heading and then just all the text. They usually help you out a little bit by having headings, and you can do the same with the headings. So for example, the first heading in the omega-3 chapter is, why are omega-3 fatty acids so important for people with ADHD? And you might know a few of those. Oh, I wonder if it's boom, boom, boom. And then you read to try and find out. And all the time, it's you're playing with the information, the new and the old, and you're having little quizzes with yourself, and you're much, much more likely to remember it. And not only that, it does become a whole lot more interesting, the whole reading process. Now, active reading, it does take a little bit longer, but I find, particularly in the beginning when you're getting used to this new habit, but I actually find that on the whole it ends up you spend less time reading the information, because if you're just skimming, you won't remember what you've read, so you have to go back to the beginning. So it's a new skill, but it's definitely worth experimenting with and trying it out. So these 3 tips that I've given you here today, they are just some of the tips, and they go into how to remember what you've read in much, much, much more detail in a new report I've written, and it's called Cover to Cover, How to Remember What You've Read When You Have ADHD, and that is part of the Untapped Brilliance course. So if you'd like more information about that, just look in the text below. Happy reading!